Kabul, a bomb has just exploded near the American embassy, killing 16 people. This attack on September the 8th, 2006 is the most violent in 5 years in the Afghan capital. The Taliban have claimed responsibility for the attack that bears Al-Qaeda's signature, a suicide car bombing. The capture of Osama bin Laden and the destruction of the Taliban regime is the armed coalition's mission in Afghanistan, the greatest international mobilization since World War II.
The United States military has begun strikes against Al-Qaeda terrorist training camps and military installations of the Taliban regime.
Side by side with the American GIs, over 10,000 elite soldiers of the coalition forces search for Al-Qaeda's commander night and day. But after 5 years, Osama bin Laden still eludes them. He's the leader of the most notorious terrorist group of all times, a group that brought America to its knees on 9/11. And the man is still at large, somewhere in the mountains between Afghanistan and Pakistan. Before 2001, bin Laden had all the time he needed to prepare his war in Afghanistan. Thousands of fighters came in and out of his training camps because, as early as 1996, he was put under the protection of the Taliban regime. 5 years after the peacekeeping forces arrived, Al-Qaeda's fighters are still here, assisted by Taliban rebels. We've filmed these exclusive scenes in the province of Ghazni, less than 2 hours away from Kabul. We're among the few journalists to be allowed to interview a group of Taliban fighters since 2001.
We are fighting the Americans because they took away our independence and they're occupying our country. We're also fighting the government because it's supporting the occupying forces. We don't have to do directly with Osama bin Laden. We get our orders from Mullah Omar by letter, by tape, or other means.
This camp has a few dozen trained fighters. They eat, sleep, and live with their weapons. They are the Taliban, but also young fundamentalists recruited in the South Afghan tribes. Pakistani and Arab Islamists come here on a regular basis to train them. Camps like these develop very quickly in Afghanistan. In all, the Taliban have about 15 to 20,000 fighters at their disposal. Their objective, to take back control of the country. Their method, terrorism, surprise attacks against the West, led by small, standalone groups. Their weaponry, anti-tank rockets, Kalashnikovs, automatic guns. They move very fast on bikes. On this particular day, the Taliban are getting ready to attack a police station. They offer to let us come along, but we refuse. We do not want to be involved in a terrorist outrage. Attacks are multiplying in Afghanistan. The country has become one of the most dangerous places in the world. In this context of extreme violence, we've been trying to understand why Osama bin Laden, the most wanted man on the surface of the earth, is still at large. We're driving back to Kabul. We want to see the Americans. A few days after our arrival, Luke Nitting, NATO spokesman, is giving his weekly press conference in front of about 30 journalists of the international press. For more than 20 minutes, Major Nitting goes on about field successes of the Western armies against Taliban rebels.
Stated operational requirement to 100 instead of 85%. Have some examples of the communications that we have shared in the area that we are currently operating in Kandahar that would allow them to do just that. 9 days, staff's Operation Medusa has struck hard at the insurgent heartland of Kandahar. Hundreds of men who we wish had instead chosen to fight for prosperity and progress in Punjabi and Pashmul no longer remain as a threat.
NATO deployed 30,000 men to secure Afghanistan, but each day the country moves closer to anarchy. When we asked the Major about bin Laden, his attitude quickly changes.
Is the capture of Osama bin Laden still priority for the coalition?
I prominently wear this ISAF badge to try to get across that I'm not a coalition soldier. I'm proudly a NATO soldier and obviously come from the American Army. I'll let the coalition speak for themselves. Their mission here continues, and they could answer that question far better than I.
So there are again strong links between Taliban fighters in the south and Al-Qaeda.
We're just not that interested in Laden's.
End of the press conference, we won't get any answers to our questions. You can only wonder if the foreign troops in Afghanistan really want to arrest the most dangerous terrorist in the world. Late afternoon in Kabul's Grand Bazaar. In spite of the growing number of terrorist attacks, the crowd are out shopping. Since the fall of the Taliban in 2001, the city has changed its appearance. We see more and more women in the streets. The markets once again have goods for sale. Billions of dollars have been invested by the international community to rebuild the country. Misery, however, can be found everywhere. Afghanistan remains one of the poorest countries in the world. More than 40% of the population are unemployed. Those who work have to survive on $40 a month, when in fact it takes $200 to support a family. In this context of misery and violence, many Afghans wonder why the Americans still haven't arrested those responsible for this situation. To them, bin Laden and his troops are getting help from Pakistan's secret service.
It's obvious that Pakistan is protecting bin Laden, as it has always done. This is why he's over there now. He doesn't have any other place to go anyway. Pakistanis have protected him since the beginning, and they allow him to go all the way to Afghanistan.
Pakistan, officially an ally of the Americans, is accused of playing both sides. They're secretly helping the Islamists, America's enemies. Furthermore, it was our Pakistani contacts who made it possible for us to meet and film the Taliban near Kabul. Pakistan, protector of bin Laden's troops. This idea is largely held by certain Afghan officials. We have a meeting with one of Ahmed Karzai's close advisors. He agrees to meet us on condition that we don't show his face. For 4 years, this man attended meetings with the Americans dedicated to the capture of Osama bin Laden. And he goes even further. According to him, the Bush administration itself doesn't want to capture the leader of Al-Qaeda.
There are friendly relationships that go back a long way. You know, the Americans are the ones who supported him and made him very famous.
Does American Secret Service have relations with people who are close to bin Laden?
Quand les hélicoptères américains vont
When American helicopters give weapons to the Afghan forces, these same helicopters are giving the same things to the Taliban. That shows that there are very secret ties between the Taliban fighters and the Americans, one way or another.
Are the Taliban fighters still linked to Al-Qaeda?
Yes, of course. There is a very strong coordination between the Taliban, Al-Qaeda and the Pakistani secret services, of course.
An unbelievable statement that would explain the growing anger of the Afghans who are turning against the West. To see for ourselves, we decided to meet the French troops who've taken command of the Kabul region. 1,200 soldiers based in a strongly protected camp. They run the risk of being attacked by the Taliban at any moment. Just outside the town, about 10 French military personnel are assisting the Afghan police in its mission of securing the area.
In our area, we have very good contact with the population and the authorities, police, Afghan National Army, which does not prevent bomb attacks from time to time, especially in the cities. We are used to patrolling on foot in the cities, which many other nations don't do. The French were the first ones to do it, and we are one of the rare nations to still do it on the Afghan territory.
The official word from the French army remains diplomatic, but in Kabul, not everybody is as reserved. In these troubled times, people are starting to talk. We have a meeting with the director of the World Bank, Jean Mazurel. He had once been one of the top diplomats in the Afghan government in managing Western aid in Afghanistan. A few days before retiring, this high official no longer has any illusions as to the real reasons for the American military presence in Afghanistan.
The reason why the American forces are here is more because Afghanistan has become a sort of geopolitical aircraft carrier stuck between fragile and vulnerable Pakistan and Iran, representing the threat we all know. And maintaining this army 10 minutes away from Islamabad and Tehran is more important than fighting Taliban. I was invited to the American embassy. I was with the deputy ambassador. The Afghanistan Minister of Foreign Affairs complained that the American government did not put enough pressure on the Pakistani government to secure the border, which is extremely porous, thus allowing the Taliban to shuttle back and forth between Pakistan and Afghanistan. The American official responded, "Pakistan and its president are vulnerable, and we will do nothing to increase Pakistan's vulnerability." I understood that when it came to choosing between Pakistan's or Afghanistan's stability, Americans would not hesitate, not for 1 second. But everybody suspects as much, given the threat Pakistan would represent if it became an Islamic country.
If the Americans don't want stability in Afghanistan, why send elite soldiers to capture al-Qaeda's leader? Officially, the French Special Forces have this mission. Their headquarters is in Jalalabad. That's where we must go to continue our report. We want to understand how bin Laden made it out of Tora Bora, and most of all, how he was able to escape the coalition troops. Aziz, our guide, is going to drive us there. For our security, he asks us to dress like Afghans. We need to be as inconspicuous as possible. Outside Kabul, danger lurks everywhere. The road to Jalalabad is one of the only Afghan roads that lead to Pakistan. Halfway between the Pakistani border and Tora Bora, where bin Laden was last officially seen at the end of 2001, before the American bombings. This road is a major highway for Afghanistan. Few cars, but many trucks loaded with merchandise. Almost everything that's sold in Afghan marketplaces comes from Pakistan. This road is used for trafficking of every kind. We're going to be stopped more than 10 times at the Afghan police checkpoints during our 125-mile-long trip. The police are more alert now since the Taliban have been gaining ground. At each checkpoint we have to talk, sometimes pay, and be as discreet as possible. Here, everyone is armed and the tension is palpable. Jalalabad, this Pashtun city has long been a gathering place for jihad fighters from all over. They've left their trace on this place, once known for its hospitality, and which now seems cut off from the rest of the world. A city under high surveillance, where our camera is not welcome.
Hey, stop!
Okay, we stop.
Never shoot in this area, okay? You got it?
We're on our way to the airport. Behind these walls and this barbed wire, the camp of the French Special Forces under American command. The Afghan army is guarding the entire area. Here, there are no two ways about it. It's strictly forbidden to film. We try to make it back to the French camp.
What does he say?
Say that they are filming airport, which is completely banned, and I stopped them. I never let them to go, so they are.
Okay. Change ta cassette, Eric.
Okay, Eric, swap the tape. Swap the tape.
Change de cassette.
They want to take the tape.
It's impossible for us to meet the French soldiers. They seem to have been informed of our report, but the subject is sensitive. The name of Osama bin Laden has become taboo for the military authorities.
Okay. Try to call him back. No, we have his number yet.
Since 2003, these 200 French elite soldiers we're trying to meet have been lent by France to the Americans. They go regularly to the front to fight the Taliban. 9 of them have been killed over the past few months. It's a heavy toll. We're driving away from the airport to contact the French Joint Chiefs of Staff in Paris. We're trying to learn more about what's happening, and mostly we're trying to get permission to film.
We have already suffered casualties, 9 dead out of 200, which is high, very high. We mustn't do anything that would jeopardize their situation. I'm really sorry. Under other circumstances, maybe not so far from the action, we may be able to introduce you to people who could talk about their job. But for the time being, it just can't be done.
D'accord. On considère, nous, en tant que journalistes,
All right.
que c'est important,
As journalists, we consider them to be French representatives on Afghani territory. I think you can understand.
Vous la comprenez. Donc bien évidemment, enfin, c'est bien aussi de notre point.
Talking about them would be endangering their lives. Huh?
D'accord. Je vous remercie.
Okay, thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Merci beaucoup. Au revoir.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Once again, filming is strictly forbidden. Why do the French Special Forces refuse to talk to us? What are they doing in Jalalabad? Are they looking for bin Laden? Do they know where he's hiding? A few months ago, we were given exceptional permission to film French soldiers from the COS, Special Operations Command. Exclusive images as they were leaving on their mission side by side with the Afghan army. These elite troops must never show their faces. Finally, we're able to obtain a secret meeting with a French soldier. We have to hide his identity, but he informs us that twice the French Special Forces had bin Laden in their gun sights.
It's true. I can testify that in 2003 and 2004 we did indeed make visual contact and that I had him in our gun sights. The sniper said, "I have a lock on bin Laden." We were at heart of action. It was nighttime, gunfire all around us. We were trying to stay out of sight. We were trenched. Don't forget the context. By the time the Americans were informed, there was no snapshot. Well, the report was correct, and then it's a problem of decision, and decision was made at Bagram. The truth is that at that moment, there was a hesitation in the chain of command.
This account has been dubbed to prevent us from identifying the soldier's voice. On 2 occasions, the French sharpshooters were waiting in position, yet no order arrived from Bagram, the American headquarters which supervised the missions of the French soldiers in the COS, and bin Laden got away. To find out more, we go to see Abdullah, one of our old acquaintances. He's one of the prominent figures in the city of Jalalabad, someone close to the warlords aiding the Americans in their search for bin Laden in 2001. Nothing happens in this region without his knowing about it. Abdullah takes us to the ruins of bin Laden's house in Jalalabad, an impressive dwelling of over 500 square meters. The leader of Al-Qaeda had brought his wives here, as well as his guardsmen from Yemen. Abdullah will reveal some surprising information on the reasons why bin Laden came here and on the way he escaped when the coalition forces were about to arrest him.
I think Jalalabad for a couple of reasons. One, because of the closeness of Tora Bora here. I guess they felt it was a good place for training for them. And also taking advantage of the Pashtun hospitality, where anyone comes and takes safety with you, you have to protect him.
Osama bin Laden had chosen Jalalabad for its proximity to the mountains of Tora Bora, which run along the Pakistani border, a perfect location which enabled him to receive logistical aid from Pakistan and to get away easily in the event of an American attack.
There were only about 50 American forces here. But I guess if most of them were with General Ali at that time. Some were with a few British and Americans with Haji Zaman. And then the third commander was Haji Zahir. He didn't have any Americans with him. So I think the whole thing was that the planning, as I said, was probably not properly done, was that the mountain passes, the caravan routes, all these areas were not properly secured. I guess anyone that has taken part in a war or in a fight, they know before you attack a place, you surround the place. I don't think they were going to wait for the B-52 bombers. And then also, there were negotiations with the Taliban at that time to surrender. That gave them a lot of time to escape.
Why, after 5 years, the coalition didn't capture Osama bin Laden, according to you?
To me, I mean, every Afghan has this question in their mind, like, why isn't Osama captured? Why isn't Mullah Omar captured? Is there some kind of a game going on here in this region? For us, I think maybe if the world is interested in capturing him or not, but the Afghans are very insecure that why isn't it happening?
Was the American army a victim of a lack of coordination, or did it deliberately begin negotiations with the Taliban, giving Osama bin Laden enough time to escape? In order to get the answer, we go to Tora Bora, a few hours away from Jalalabad. But the Taliban are monitoring the road. Remote-controlled bomb attacks are frequent. We'll have to be extremely careful. Abdullah will look out for our safety.
Yes, cover your heads. If you have hats or pakols, just put them on your head and try not to film as much on the way going to Tora Bora, because you might get IEDs on the way back.
We're obliged to take an escort. There are mines along the road. The day before, the Taliban assassinated 2 commanding officers of the Afghan police. A short stop at an unlikely Afghan police hideout, and we're back on our way, accompanied by armed men. Tora Bora is on a mountain road close to the Pakistani border. This is where bin Laden escaped the coalition forces in 2001. It's here in the mountains of Tora Bora that we have a meeting with the Rugiani tribe. A few hundred men, women and children live here under the authority of their chief, Haji Abdullah. This warlord is highly respected. He's part of the Mujahideen commanders who offered their help to the Americans to arrest bin Laden at the end of 2001, an offer that he says was refused. Like a growing number of Afghans, Haji Abdullah believes that Al-Qaeda's leader was able to take advantage of the Americans' complacency in order to escape.
Definitely yes. I know that some of the leaders you're talking about can move through tribal regions, especially along the border, because they convince the villagers to help them through religion, through Islam. It's very easy for them to travel in that zone without any problem.
Why the coalition don't catch them? Why the Americans, for example, don't catch them?
We know very well that the Americans are not interested in capturing him. That's exactly the question. Better ask them directly.
Can you tell us how Usama escaped from this area in 2001?
I don't believe he escaped. Someone let him go. The Americans have the means to control and see everything from airspace. So how could they miss the 70 people who were with him? Apparently they let him go.
And why?
Better fish in troubled waters, as we say in Pashto.
This is a proverb in Pashtun. So you mean that the coalition lets the place very clear to let him escape? I mean the American.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, absolutely. I suggested that the Americans give me the responsibility and the necessary means to have the job done. If they had done that, I'm 99% sure I would have caught bin Laden. Why? Because I'm from this region and I know it better than anyone. But they wouldn't accept my help, so he was able to escape.
Yeah, if the forces are here, maybe it's because Usama is here. What does he think about?
Yes, absolutely. They didn't come here for nothing. They're not crazy.
From Kabul to Jalalabad, accusations against the Americans are growing. It could be, however, just coordination problems or a lack of knowledge of the region. One man may very well have the answer. His name, Haji Zaher. This warlord has become a general in the Afghan police. He's one of 3 Afghan commanders who helped the Americans during the Tora Bora attack. He's very close to the Americans and has already received death threats from Al-Qaeda. He's going to surprise us. For the first time, he talks about what happened during the Tora Bora attack, and his story sounds unbelievable.
There is one thing I have to say you. One is the rumors and one is the truth things. Myself, I'm not following the rumors. We're trying to follow the truth and get correct information. First, when the Tora Bora fighting started in that time, really in that time there was 3 commanders from Afghan side. One was me, and we decided to attack on, but Haji Zaman came and in meeting, and he said, no, today we don't need attack on them because they send a message to me, tomorrow in morning in 8 o'clock we are surrounding. And the mission stopped because Haji Zaman said we are in contact with them and they are coming down and they are putting their guns. But in morning time, in 8 o'clock, we didn't hear anything from them. And just B-52 came, and B-52 made an air right 8 by his by his airplane's smoke. They write 8 o'clock. It means the time is finished, and after that the fighting is start. But we didn't catch after that any one of them there. It's why the plan was weak. I don't know myself, but I'm accepting as a professional, as an army general, I'm accepting the plan was weak.
Why did the Americans let Osama bin Laden escape? At this stage of our investigation, the idea of Pakistani pressure still seems to be the most likely possibility. To reach our final destination, we must cross the border and enter Pakistan. For this dangerous trip across the mountains, we'll once more need an escort. The Taliban are still here, hidden in the shadows, ready to attack any convoy. Once again, the Afghan police will be our bodyguards. Their chief helps us because he thinks our presence will allow him to get his message across. His mission is to secure an Al-Qaeda and Taliban-infested region, but he doesn't have enough manpower at hand. He needs to let people know that he needs more means. We're going to be driving for a long time. Moreover, we wonder if the Americans ended up giving in to Pakistan's pressure. Just as many of the people we interviewed have explained, the Americans do not want to run the risk of Islamists turning Pakistan into a bloodbath if bin Laden is captured, for he's a true icon for a lot of Pakistanis. After driving for a day, we arrive at Dhaka along the Pakistani border. In this small fort, we meet Nazim Jabbar Kale, its commander. He's the leader of a phantom brigade somewhere in the middle of the mountains. Their mission to stop Taliban and Al-Qaeda's fighters crossing the border. A few dozen meters from here, Pakistan. This garrison is of utmost importance to the coalition, but Commander Nazim is disgusted with the insufficient means at his disposal. He's also very critical of Pakistan's secret police that may be protecting the leader of Al-Qaeda.
We have a 1550-mile-long common border with Pakistan. I have myself been an officer here for the past 4.5 years, and I can assure you that most of our problems come from this region. Usama is not in the Afghan tribes. It's obvious he's hiding over there, on the Pakistani side. Let's call a spade a spade. If we go back 15 years, we have proof that Pakistani secret services helps Al-Qaeda people in the war in Afghanistan, here as well as in Mazar al-Sharif or Chamali. Today, Pakistan has not changed its politics, and no one in Afghanistan has any doubt about that.
Everywhere, Afghan police and military are getting increasingly bitter. They now feel they've been given a raw deal. Millions of dollars have been invested in Afghanistan to find bin Laden and his troops. Afghans, however, are exasperated by their lack of means and accuse their American allies of giving in to Pakistan. So we must go to Peshawar to find some kind of explanation and understand why everyone's been pointing their finger at Pakistan since the beginning of our report. On the road, we drive through the well-known tribal zones. In the midst of the border region, it's the main area for all sorts of trafficking. We're very close to the place where bin Laden was last seen just a few months ago. We're driving through the border checkpoint in Toram. Here, we find ourselves in the most difficult moment of our report, our encounter with the Afghan army. We're filming the border zone when about 10 armed men stop us. Video cameras are strictly forbidden here. We barely have time to hide our tapes before they deliver us to the American army. After 2 hours, we're allowed to cross the border. On the other side, the Pakistan army, ready to escort us, weapons in hand. No way can we take our camera out. Peshawar, capital of Northwest Frontier Province. It's close to Waziristan, where bin Laden is thought to be hiding. With nearly 800,000 inhabitants, Peshawar is seen as a bastion of Muslim fundamentalism. Murder, abductions, violent demonstrations, the town's been deserted by foreigners. It's placed under high surveillance by the Pakistani authorities. Here, Osama bin Laden has many supporters. We need special permission to film. Our first stop in Peshawar, Hamid Gul's office. This former chief of the Pakistani Secret Service is a prominent figure in Pakistan. He's strongly suspected of having helped finance Al-Qaeda. We asked him if he believed bin Laden was still alive and if the Americans would eventually capture him.
This is very difficult to say they will never find him, unless one can say that, okay, he's dead, and now what are they never going to find him? No, but every now and then the evidence which Americans themselves put out, it shows that he is still alive. But probably they'd say that he's planning another operation. I don't know. But I think Al-Qaeda is now out in the open. Al-Qaeda doesn't belong to any one man. It's not taking instructions from one central authority. Rather, it is a global franchise. Whoever has a grouse to settle against America wants to wreak vengeance on imperialism and capitalism.
In Pakistan, Peshawar symbolizes the fight against the United States and its allies. The town shelters Taliban leaders who fled Afghanistan since the arrival of the international coalition in 2001. But they're regaining strength, and it was in Pakistan that we fixed our report on the Taliban going back to Afghanistan. At the same time, an ally of the Americans and a haven for the fundamentalists, why is Pakistan playing for both sides? We have a meeting at the BBC, the British radio and TV network in Peshawar. Ashraf Ali is a renowned specialist of the Taliban movement.
Basically, you see, it's a sort of double game. The Pakistani government was playing. On the one hand, they would support the Taliban, and on the other hand, they are an ally in the war on terror. Basically, if you see, General Pervez Musharraf is under pressure from various fronts. If you see his on external scenario, if you see America is pressurizing him on the war on terror. Secondly, Afghanistan has also been leveling allegations that Pakistan is not doing more. And if you see, the same as we are again, we have another front with India. The other thing is that the religious circles, they are pressurizing General Musharraf for these things. The people in the conservative areas, as you know, a majority of the people are living in the conservative areas. They are on very good terms with the Taliban, and they have all their sympathies with the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. And to some, they would say that still Osama bin Laden is the hero of Islam.
Pakistan's Islamists feel stronger every day. In a poor district of Peshawar is Mahabbat Mosque. It shelters a fundamentalist movement, the Sharia United Front, and of course its own madrasa, a Quran school where dozens of youngsters are trained each year. This mosque is run by Mullah Qureshi. Close to Mullah Omar, he's one of the fundamentalist leaders in Pakistan. Upon our arrival, his son discreetly comes to greet us because we're not officially allowed to film here. The Pakistani Secret Service is keeping a watchful eye on the mosque and on Mullah Muhammad Yusuf Qureshi. Here, however, Islamist leaders such as Qureshi are virtually untouchable because they're so popular, and also because they're serving the interests of the regime, acting as middlemen to negotiate with the Taliban.
The brutal and unjust behavior of the coalition has only made Osama bin Laden more popular, to the point that he can now count on the support he gets from local population. Afghan and Pakistani communities joined together in prayer to support him. Actually, the more America hurts Osama, the more his popularity increases with the local population. But it's true that the Pakistani government's position is not very clear. They are dealing with both Taliban and Americans.
In the streets of Pakistan, fundamentalist speeches like Qureshi's are spreading. More and more often, the Taliban are organising anti-Western demonstrations to gain favour and put pressure on the Pakistani government of President Musharraf. The growing pressure is expressed by outspoken members of parliament, including Shabir Ahmad Khan. Close to the Islamist organisation of the Muslim Brothers, he's someone President Musharraf talks to.
The big army of the West and the European army came Afghanistan and Pakistan and utilized the Pakistan airports and the Pakistan logistic support with Bush and with Tony Blair without any permission of the Pakistani nation. But don't search Osama and their friend. Pakistan is a very important geopolitical situation in this region. In this region is a launching pad. In the future scenario, Iran is present. And compared to Iran, China is a very challenging country in future, near future. Therefore, America wants that they stay here.
After several months, our investigation has to end. Pakistan's Secret Service is putting pressure on us. Staying any longer would put us in danger. Our inquiry has raised disturbing questions. The case of bin Laden is an embarrassment to the authorities in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and the United States. The Americans, already weakened in Iraq, must provide some firm answers if they're to stop their situation in Afghanistan from deteriorating still further.